Yeah.
Jeff Bezos is a co-creator with God. There's nothing you want to tell me. It's not about, he's been able to apply himself, build businesses that feeds a lot of people all over the world.
If the churches in Nigeria can unite like the churches in Uganda, there's so many things. If we can speak with one voice, there's so many things. And I think, I may be wrong and stand to be corrected. I think one of the major issues is we're so focused on building our churches.
I'm looking at where can this guy possibly be? That is what I owe him. So I cannot come every time I see him the same way, every year.
The same condition.
The same condition. So it's the simple model, it has to be transformative. So I really don't think people understand or are going to understand the message of unity until some certain things in their life is dealt with.
Precious people, welcome to Rough Table Talk podcast. Our goal is to transform lives through meaningful conversations. Today's guest is Kester Audu. Kester has explored several European countries and worked at the Center for International Migration and Development in Germany. Through his experience with diverse European cultures, he has gained valuable insights and expertise which he plans to leverage in coaching and mentoring Nigerian businesses. His focus spans key sectors such as agri-tech, agribusiness, education, fintech, healthcare, logistics, artificial intelligence, and more. Today, we want to have meaningful conversations that will transform lives. We are privileged to see things through the prism of Audu's experiences and expertise. It's going to be an evocative conversation. Once again, Kester Audu, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ralph, and I'm glad to be part of your podcast this morning.
I'm so glad to have you.
Yeah.
In 2017, you attended an open forum in Sweden at Uppsala University, and that was where Ravi Zacharias was a keynote speaker of blessed memory. And I remember when we had this conversation, there was a question you asked. This is nearly a decade ago. And I felt that by now you've had enough time to ponder and get answers from that question. And the question you asked, because I went back to YouTube and I watched that video, and in short, you were fantastic when you were asking that question. And this is the question that you asked: how do you explain the situation in Africa where there is so much religious belief yet little transformation? You asked this question 9 years ago, and I think you didn't get the answers that you wanted from that open forum in Sweden. And I just feel that today you have come to the point where you have gathered and thought about it. And I feel that we need to analyze that question.
Excellent. I recall very well. It was Uppsala. I think Ravi was the title of that conference was Why I Am a Christian. And it was a congregation filled with diverse people, atheists, different religion. And I remember the lady sitting close to me. She was surprised. There were about 3 or 4 Africans in that forum. And we were engaging, and that's where that question came about, that why do we have so much religious belief in Africa and less transformation? And transformation in the sense of lives of the people, human capital index. Then you begin to look at Europe, you look at Africa and things like that. So I, for one, I'm very much interested, because I know that you cannot actually do a lot of development in Africa if you don't understand religious organizations and understand the principles and the philosophy that drives it. And what I've come to realize is that, yes, on one hand, all the religious institutions, they have the good things they're doing, and we need to understand that you cannot transform Africa if you don't understand what is happening in that sector. However, there are some gaps, and those gaps are those are the things we really need to speak into that can actually bring out the kind of messaging that can transform lives in Africa. So I remember reading a book called The Change Agent some years ago, where O.S. Hilmer was talking about the cultural mountains you have to, comparing Christianity in Guatemala and that in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Because what we are looking for is we want people's life to be transformed, because you see people, they can actually die a generation of poverty, even no matter how much religious beliefs they have, if some messages are not given that can actually transform life. So yes, 9 years ago I asked that question, is still in effect today. But we're not where we were 9 years ago.
Very true.
A lot of messages are coming out. There's a little transformation you are seeing in people. And I'll give you an example. So if you take, for instance, a father of faith in Nigeria who I admire a lot. And that is because of the impact on the society. You know, someone takes, for instance, the Covenant University. That is an impact on education.
Yeah.
Landmark. It's beyond the preaching in the church. It has transformed. I, for one, we engage labor, and I can tell you that meeting graduates from that university, it's fantastic. So I also believe that if you have religious organizations or churches who can say, you know what, we want to focus on health sector, we want to focus on agriculture, we want to be the biggest employers of labor, those are the kind of messagings we should be hearing.
Yeah.
And that is the influence of the church on the society.
Thank you so much. You know, and there was a second keynote speaker there at that open forum. His name is Michael Ramsey, if I can remember. Yeah.
Yes.
And I also love his response to your question. And he said that if we solve the issue of corruption in Africa, that Africa will be one of the richest continents in the world. And he also made it clear that there are people who claim to be Christians, that Christianity has more like become a cultural label. And people are just claiming to be Christianity, but you cannot actually see the fruit in them. So could it be that maybe one of the issues that we have in Africa is we have so many people who just are bearing, so to speak, the cultural label, and we're not seeing the transformation because there are so many people who are claiming to be Christians, but have not actually experienced the transformative powers of Christ within them. Or what's your take on that?
So my take on that is that yes, so if there are people who make those claims, because I think one significant thing that came out from that conversation in Uppsala, and Ravi pointed that out, that an atheist did a research some time ago in Africa, and he says, see, if you take away that religious factor from Africa, it will be a darker continent. You should know that we have evolved. So if you even take away what you even have now, with barbarians killing ourselves, in fact, the height of corruption will be enormous. So, but if there are people who have labels and they claim, so it's a very simple question of what is the kind of messaging they are receiving, and what is the kind of platform they are hearing some of these things that is not been able to bring that significant transformation to them. So yes, and you hear people, and of course everybody have to, we have to grow, we have to evolve, but the kind of messaging you hear matters. So I believe that religious institutions in Africa, we have not gotten to the creative ability of men. We've not really explored that messaging. So we believe so much in God. You don't know that God is very creative. So if you tell me today, I will tell you that if you look at it, Jeff Bezos, Amazon, if you look at an Elon Musk, these are co-creators with God. Why? Do you know how many people feed from Amazon? Do you know how many people feed from the work and the brain power of Elon Musk? So we're still at that place where we believe that everything, yes, miracles happen, but we don't understand that they are creative miracles. How do we lift Africa from the darkness, the energy deficiency, and the gap? People have to be creative about it, and the people is the and the power is actually lies within religious institutions. If we push such kind of messages out for somebody, you don't understand that taking a flight, walking into a plane, and all of a sudden in 6 hours, 7 hours, you've landed in your destination. That's a miracle. People thought about that. They created something. I believe very strongly that religious organizations in Nigeria, if you want to see that power, we need to start rolling out very creative messages in the human potentials that can actually unlock us. So it's not a placebo effect that I go to a religious institution today, I pray. I must be able to say this is the effect of my prayer. I'm not the same person I am 10 years ago. There are things I know now I don't know 10 years ago. But not just the knowledge, the application of it. And that's why I've come to believe, and this is my honest opinion, I don't feel the black man will be respected anywhere in the world until a black race can develop. Because if you are so intelligent, why are you not applying it in your society? If you are so smart, why are you not transforming your environment? So I schooled in Germany and I understand a little bit of the history of Germany. That place built everything from the rubbles of the war. When you talk about efficiency, you see it in the society. So there are some prayers you don't pray when you live outside Africa. You don't pray that, oh, let me not have an accident or something, because systems work. And that's the creative ability of the human mind. So I believe very strongly that we need to explore more of the creative sides of God in our messaging in religious institutions.
Wow, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful with the balance that you brought from what you said, that if not for the level of Christianity that we have, Africa would have been worse. And I mean, sometimes people try to downplay how we pray. But to be honest, to what you've said, the prayers have helped us. I mean, it would have been worse. We should be better though, but we would have been worse without Christianity. And I think there needs to be a transition from miracles to being more creative, I think. I think the miracle message is what is drawing so much of Nigerians these days. And I think that's become a coping mechanism in a way because of what we are going through. So people are looking for quick solutions. And that is why they are drawn more to the message of miracles than the message of hard work and tapping into the creative power of God. So will you say that maybe the Christianity that we have in Nigeria, because of the situation that is affecting us, it has become like a coping mechanism?
Certainly. And it's not a bad thing if it's a coping mechanism, because where you have systems that are broken down, you don't have infrastructure, you can't plan in your life. People can't see what their future will look like in the continent or in the country. So yes, so it's a placebo effect. It's good because it keeps your mind alive. Hope does not make ashamed. Yes. But however, the limitation is that you don't fully explore yourself. You don't get into that realm where you become co-creator with God. Because it's supposed to be, yes, hope, faith, move up the ladder. So, but you can't just keep people, you can't keep it congregate at that level that, oh, when I'm living today, I remember some time ago, someone was telling me that, oh, you come, let's say for a miracle service, somebody prays for you and everybody shouts, and immediately after that message finishes, just behind the counseling room, you are having thousands of people still waiting to see the same person. So you now wonder what actually happened in that place. So what I'm just trying to say is that the hope is good, because if not for that, we'll be darker, like we will have no future. But however, we need to rise from there. We need to tell people they have the potential to become anything they want to be. And the religious institutions have a lot of influence to shape the society. It's the messaging that comes from there to say, you know what, we have this hope. Now we have a faith that can change this. I sometimes I imagine a religious organization just saying, one man, one farm. The power that has to guarantee our food security. So it's a leadership thing, and it should be very directional and very focused. I don't understand why a religious organization cannot come up and say, you know what, we want to be the biggest employers of labor. That would bring in manufacturing ideas. People will live off that thing. People will feed. People don't need to now pray for money. They will have money. There will be economic development. That is exactly where we need to put. Yes, it's a coping mechanism for a lot of people, but at the same time, as good as it is, we cannot remain there for decades or generations. We must transition.
I think one of the essence of our conversation is to actually provoke people to make that transition. Yes, the church has done very well in Africa, but it's about time that we make transition to another level where we begin to encourage Christians to be more productive, to be more creative. Because I've read the Bible like 10 times now, and most times the problem that people have is that there's so much difference of what happened in the Bible and what is happening now. If you look at Nigeria, for example, I mean, in Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria, the church is literally everywhere. But yet there is still the prevalence of corruption. And that was because the Bible says we are the light of the world, we are the salt of the world. And ideally, when there are more Christians in a community, that community should be affected for good. You know, the greater the Christian presence, the greater the benefit to the society at large. And in America, they actually want to test this hypothesis that where we have more Christians, that society is supposed to be transformed. So a journalist did a research actually, and they discovered that Dallas, Texas is the place that has the highest attendance, church attendance of Christians. So they decided to use that place for their research. You know, and I'll just read it out. The journalists looked at the various statistics and studies, including crime safety on streets, police enforcement, healthcare, hospitals, infant mortality rates, and the distribution of caregivers, and the general economies, etc. By the time the journalists had finished the conclusion of the Dallas study, no one would want to live in the city in that condition. The crime, the decrepit social systems, the economic discrepancies, the racial injustice, all disqualified this community from having the adequate quality of life. And this was the most Christianized city in America. You know, this is like an oxymoron because the most Christianized city in America is supposed to be the most blessed city. So I don't know where we have gotten it wrong. Martin Luther said, and I quote, "A gospel that does not deal with the issues of the day is not the gospel at all." So I don't know if you can shed more light on why we are having this paradox, because where we have Christians who have Christ, we are the light of the world. It means that such a society is supposed to be really blessed because of the presence of Christians in that area. But based on this study that took place in Dallas, Texas, it was discovered that that hypothesis was disqualified.
Yes. So it's still a messaging on what comes out from the pulpits, the platforms. It's a messaging question. But I also believe that there are societies where you have heavy presence of religious institutions, because I'm not even just limiting it to, the church, where you actually have good practicing religious people who are actually shining the light there. But however, you need to build a critical mass of that to be able to say influence different cultural mountains. So you can't just keep everybody in a place. There are people who are supposed to be marketplace businessmen, who that is their forte. That is where they shine the light. That is where they have creative abilities. They don't necessarily, and that's why I've mentioned it again, and I'll say it.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff Bezos is a co-creator with God. There's nothing you want to tell me. It's not about, he's been able to apply himself, build businesses that feeds a lot of people all over the world. So he once again is that messaging. So sometimes people are just limited to saying, okay, because they see spirituality from one dimension. But spirituality is supposed to affect the whole man. And I believe that that's the essence. There's a reason God gave you the body. There's a reason he gave you the soul. There's a reason why you have the spirit, if you believe in that. And every of that thing must have equal healthy status. So the messaging comment is probably what we need to, scrutinize. Maybe that's what we need to just say, okay, yes. Because even you yourself, I keep asking people, how do you measure the impact of your messaging? You see, that quality, someone can tell you, I say, you know what, in the past 10 years, go to maybe like John Maxwell, he tell you, in the past 10 years, I've grown 10,000 leaders, and this is how I did it. So, but you see, we're so concerned, sometimes we're so concerned in religious institution, concerned about the crowd, how they feel when they come and things like that. But I'm interested because if those people are not empowered, if those people are not even growing to a level that can even surpass you, you should be worried, because I really believe that true religion and true spirituality is very liberating. It frees you from shackles.
Yeah.
So it's not something that binds you and you feel, oh, I must actually act in this manner. You would see the effect on you. And that is why I believe that messages, maybe we should measure more of impact on how lives are transformed, not just on the spiritual plane, how it even affects them in the environment. So it's a messaging question.
I hear you very well. So is the curriculum, the message that needs to change? From your own analysis, you felt that, I mean, you think if the message is changed, everything will actually change with those who are hearing the message.
Yes, and just to point out, I think I studied a little bit of Sunday Adelaja had a fantastic model on how he built that kind of, congregation in Ukraine. Fantastic. Even when you look at people like David had, the people who came to David were people in distress. They were poor, they were in debt, and he built an army out of them. So I remember reading about Adelaja, what he did, going to the train stations, those people who were poor, giving them food and things like that. And they rose, they transformed. So one thing I can tell you, for instance, even when you hear people, African people saying, oh, going outside the shores for global crusade and global things, is that I have to be very honest with you. Check those congregations. You would just find just very few white people there. Because what it means is that you've not gotten to that level to penetrate them. We'll just talk to ourselves. So maybe you are coming again to that place where it's like, oh, it's hope that keeps us alive. But if you look at Adelaja's model, if you go to Adelaja's church in Ukraine, it was purely the natives. How do you get into the hearts of men like that? There must be something very transformative about that. And I just feel that. So it's not a bad thing that we're even having global crusades all over the world that we're talking to ourselves. But we said, let's get that body of Christ to be more productive and maximize our potential. So our effect is not just in buildings and in the crowd. It's our ability to even transform economic conditions around us. How does it feel? Somebody keeps coming to church 10, 5 years, 15 years. They're still in the same economic condition. Then you should query your messages.
I agree so much with you. And the model of Sunday Adelaja, I think is a model. How he started was really fantastic. I mean, I also read about him. He fed over 2,000 people every day. He picked the nobodies, like what David did in Adullam Cave. And he literally trained these people to become great people. Most of his people became politicians from nothing.
Yeah.
And his congregation were mostly the natives, the white people. So I think it's a model, because you said something very important, that most of the crusades that we're having outside Nigeria, for example, most times is the Nigerian people that are attending those crusades. So Africans that are attending. So what model do you think that Sunday Adelaja, at least when he started, I don't know of him now, but I know that he really started very well. Maybe you can explain, if you have an idea of the model, so that maybe there's a pastor who's watching and who's hearing us right now and may want to learn from that model, because maybe the model that we're using is not effective. And I think how Sunday Adelaja started is fantastic.
So it's about servant leadership and transformative leadership. I won't follow you. It's the model Jesus used. Turning nobodies to change the world. So it has to be transformative leadership and servant leadership. To say, I meet you from point A, I want to take you. Say, come, follow me. You've been catching fishes. I'll make you fishers of men. I will give you the keys into the hearts of men. That's a higher level. It's beyond nets. It's beyond just using your boat on the sea. Yes, you can do that. But I want to give you something more. And that's why you now find out, oh, someone like Peter or Shy, all of a sudden it becomes bold. That's transformative. So there are even pockets of political leaders in Africa. So I can tell you today, as much as you criticize, as much as many people will criticize our current president in Nigeria, he's a transformative leader. Everybody around him, he met them from a point, he took them around. That's the only way. So if you have a platform, if you're leading a religious organization, or you're even leading a company, you must be. If I see my staff, I'm looking at where can this guy possibly be? That is what I owe him.
Yeah.
So I cannot come every time I see him the same way every year.
The same condition.
The same condition. So it's the simple model, it has to be transformative. So any approach you build around that, if the major goal is, and if our politicians abide by those, they go out. After how many years of independence, we still can't fix light. But they go outside the country, they see. In fact, when I was returning back to Nigeria, one reason I chose not to stay in Europe, and I tell you, the day I stepped my foot in Frankfurt Airport, I was like, human beings built this. Then there's something wrong with us. And someone like Bishop Oyedewo will tell you, I walked through a robots university and I said, what? This can be done in Africa. That is what we need. That belief in ourselves. Because on our religious institutions, you may want to also correct them for. They are not infallible.
Yeah.
And I think I will need to discuss that, because I also don't like how much the society judge religious leaders. They're very quick when they feel like, oh, somebody has slipped and things like that. You see the hammer. No. They are just in their discipline. They are just in their, and they're fallible.
Very true.
But it doesn't mean that virtues they have, or whatever calling or whatever messages they pass to you, are heretic. No. So you must know how to balance that, because you hear some people now, maybe by the time you quote some names, they'll be like, oh, don't attach. No. Your mind should mature beyond that. What are things you can learn? So back again is a transformative leadership model and approach. So whether you're in a political space, whether you're in a business space, if these conversations we're having does not lead to people, if provocative questions for people to be able to say, okay, what are these people saying? That can transform people. Because sometimes I was like, what's wrong with us? If a political leader can say, okay, you know what? I've been to this place. I want to move my community. Go to some communities. I was recently discussing with some people. I said, yes, all this will have value about Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, the main cities. Some of us have to go beyond that now.
Yeah.
We need to get into building communities and sustainable cities. Go into the interiors. Plan programs there. Gather people there. Open them. Expose them. That is how we are going to grow. So if political leaders can even think transformative ideas, if religious leaders can think transformative ideas, even they use themselves, if they can just think transformation. So take, for instance, all the things we are using, whether Facebook, X Space, anything, people created them. What have we created? I just strongly believe that in this present age of the church, if they are going to be very relevant, we need to get to the creative space. And the creative space is where you have transformation. So if the lava does not turn to a butterfly, it becomes a moth. It doesn't shine. And that's why you see the lack of luster around African countries and things like that. We've been in Europe, where the person you are coming to ask for grants and aids. The person who came to the office rode on the train and came with bicycle. Not because he's poor. He's contented. His system is working. The you that came to bed, you came with limousine and your aids. It's just a dysfunction. So if we're not creative, if we don't think transformative leadership, if we don't think servant leadership, we'll remain the same way we are.
Thank you so much. Transformative leadership. And for what you're saying, the true test of a leader is that the people under your leadership must transform. They must grow. People should not remain the same way. when they started following your leadership. And then you said something that really caught my attention. Man of God is first of all a man.
Yes.
It's not an angel. So we need to apply wisdom with the ways that we're so quick to judge men of God.
Exactly.
Because they're human beings like every one of us.
Yes.
But of course, there's a lot of expectations because of the office. I mean, the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is expected. But also we should apply wisdom, mercy on how we judge them, because they are first of all a man before a man of God. Now, hearing you speak, I think there are two gospels. There's the gospel of salvation and the gospel of the kingdom. And I think the gospel of the kingdom is the one that really focuses on creativity, production, and turning around the society. Because if you look at most of the religious leaders in Nigeria, they focus more of their attention and resources in building the church and not the kingdom. So do you think maybe that's one of the issues, that in Nigeria we have more of the gospel of salvation than the gospel of the kingdom?
So I think of course in the gospel of the kingdom you have the gospel of salvation, because that's even the entry point.
Yeah.
So what I really even so much appreciate even about religious organizations and churches is that it's the same model. If you're able to build a church, you can build businesses. If you are able to have, it's just the same principle. Because even when they were about to build the Tower of Babel, he said, even God said, see, whatever is in this guy's mind, they will do it. So if I decide that I want to have a congregation where the average member in my church is a multi-billionaire, it can be done. That there is no cost. Like when you come to this, so I have a few friends who always talk about conversations like this. And he gave me one acronym. He called it, he said, our church. Abundant health and abundant wealth. He just gave that. We'll talk about this. So what I'm trying to say is that it's the same model. So the fact that we have people who can build auditoriums, build, churches, if they set their mind and say, you know what, we want to build health facilities all across this country, world class, it can be done. We want to have standard farms all across this country, it can be done. That is now the gospel from salvation and coming into the kingdom. But of course, the gospel of salvation is fundamental. Because if you don't even come into that place, you can't come into the creative realm that God is. So it's not to criticize the church. They're doing well. And like we said, if they were not even, there will be a darker continent.
Yeah, that's so true.
So what we're now seeing is that, yes, small light is shining. Let's make it a floodlight. Let's move.
Let's make it.
Yes, let's influence government. Let's influence media. Let's influence entertainment. Let's get critical mass of people in there. And that is the transformation we need. So yes, the gospel of salvation is important because it's the gateway into the gospel of the kingdom. But let's now make sure that through truths God created, he said, be fruitful, multiply, have dominion. Let's really now replicate that.
Thank you so much. Because if you look at it, the gospel of the salvation, or the focus that most of the religious leaders have about their churches, has actually caused disunity. Because if we are focused on the kingdom, we can come together to build God's kingdom. Because the prayer that Jesus Christ taught his disciples is, let his kingdom come, thy will be done, thy kingdom come on earth. So the kingdom is supposed to spread all over the earth. What that means is that churches are supposed to come together, unite together to expand God's kingdom. But there's too much focus on expanding my church than expanding God's kingdom. And that has brought a lot of disunity. Our colonial masters, one of their strategy was divide and rule. And as long as we are divided, we can't have that power and unity to actually expand God's kingdom. And in 1999 in Uganda, they had a HIV prevalence. And by 2001, it had dropped to 5%. And that was because the pastors in Uganda actually came together. They came together and impressed upon the government to do three things: to promote sexual abstinence among unmarried people. They stressed the importance of monogamy among married partners. and place high priority on instructions on preventative hygiene to the people. In short, what they came up with based on their unit is what they call the ABC. The A is abstinence, the B is be faithful, monogamy, and then the C is use condoms. And because of that, they dropped the HIV prevalence in Uganda. So you can see the power of unity. If the churches in Nigeria can unite like the churches in Uganda, there's so many things. If we can speak with one voice, there's so many things. And I think, I may be wrong and stand to be corrected. I think one of the major issue is we're so focused on building our churches, or will I say our empires, that there's so much competition between. So if there's a lot of competitions, it will affect that unity to actually advance God's kingdom. What do you think about?
So very important, the unity question. So even before I come down here in Africa, I think it's something I also observe even in diaspora, among even Nigerians, among Africans. You don't have that unism, and I think that is also something when you hear United States of America, it doesn't mean there's no division, but when it comes to a common cause, you see everybody rally around together. Honestly, I have thought around what can actually unify us. So when you see people that are driven by maybe their greed, they're driven by their level of insecurity, they are driven by their ambition. The truth is, you don't have many people who think about the common good. So, but it's not a bad thing if you face survival. So I really don't think people understand or are going to understand the message of unity until some certain things in their life is dealt with. So, but one thing I can only maybe see that is hopeful is that Zaraf, we really don't need to share the same ideals. We don't need to share even the same beliefs, because sometimes when the message of unity is preached, it feels like we must act the same way, behave the same way. No, but we can have a common ground in solving our common problems. I don't need to believe in your message for me to feed somebody who is hungry or create jobs for people. So that common ideal, and say, can we just focus on our commonalities? What looks at us? African leaders, we don't need to have the same level of wealth or the same level of ambition. Or can we move our continent from this hole to another place? That should unite us. However we want to do it. But we don't need to wear the same kind of clothes. We don't need to be in the same kind of denomination. But can we just agree that our people are living in squalor and poverty, and how do we just come around it? Any messaging that gets us, to bring these people out and transform them, let's agree on that. Because, when we get into that, yes, people will tell you they are orthodox, people will tell you they are political side. It's okay. We're humans. And I also believe that even that diversity, it's God's creation.
Yeah, there's beauty in diversity.
Yes.
But could it be that is part of the colonial legacy? Because, the divide and rule actually brought a lot of division in Nigeria. So could it be that this division has seeped into the church as one of the legacy of the colonial masters? Many African countries inherited governance systems and structures that were not designed for long-term development, but rather for resource extraction. So could it be that it's part of what the colonial masters have bequeathed to us that we're finding so hard? Because it's not even just in the church, even among the ethnic groups, you can see a lot of division in Nigeria. If Nigeria truly unites, I'm telling you, we'll be the greatest nation in the world. And if you look at it again, you will discover that most businesses in Nigeria do not outlive the owner. And you go to European countries, America, you can see businesses that have been 200 years, 300 years. But in Nigeria, it's very hard. Most of the great names, once they die, the legacy goes with them. There's a Chinese proverb that says, family wealth does not last for 3 generations. The first generation makes the money. The second generation spends the money. and the third generation sees none of the money. And I think that may even be the situation in Nigeria sometimes. A first generation makes the money, the second one comes and spends the money, and the third one does not even see the money. So why is it that it's such an issue in Nigeria? We can't have businesses that outlive the founders. Most of the businesses, most of the legacy dies with the founders. And I think it's an issue that I would like you to address, because maybe there's a young person who's watching. Is there a way that we can detox ourselves from the colonial legacy? So is there a way we can be united? Is there a way that we can build businesses that outlive us? I don't know, what's your take on that?
So I hear a lot. We will see a lot of effects even of colonialism, but to be honest, we're also getting exposed. Some of us are schooling outside. We're exposed now. You have a critical mass of people who see things. Why don't we also begin to adopt models that takes us away from those effects? Because we can't play the blame game forever. And even people who you think were colonial masters, they have challenges also in their society that they're also grappling with. So yes, there is that effect. We know, even to the kind of way we're educated and things like that. But the mind of a man is very elastic. It can absorb a lot of things. So you can decide to focus on what you feel can be done in your little way. And that is why I appreciate people who have been able to even build businesses, even in very tough climes, like this in Africa. I give a lot of respect to people like that, no matter how small it is. However, coming to the question of not having businesses, outliving founders. So I have two. I mean, come across this in two ways.
Okay.
So number one, I believe there is time, and there's also an end. So, Moses won't go to Canaan. There must be a Joshua. Yes, we all belong to the same tribe, but Moses, your time ends here. Joshua, take it off. So every time I go, maybe by the graveside, there is something that always strikes me, is the dash in between. And even me being someone who have actually lost people very dear to me, one thing I always know is that there is always an end to anything. Even family businesses could evolve. So sometimes an end is not necessarily negative. It could be an end signifies the beginning of something. So I know myself. Yes, your children may not want to carry your legacy on. It's not necessarily mean you failed. It means that is a new dream that has come alive through you. So it should be interpreted like that. But however, I know that in sustainability, for the long run, we need to teach people how to think in those models. And that is why maybe many Africans were not even able to preserve wealth, were not even able to keep riches, because we are not even taught. We don't know the act of it.
Yeah, we don't know the act.
We don't know the act of it. So if you give somebody today, so that's why I think they reference the tribe, that if you give somebody from a tribe, I won't mention the tribe, like you give him $1 million or you give him 1 million. He said the next day you see that guy, he will be dead on the streets with bottles of alcohol around him. Because all he's used to is to eat up his seed and to take him off out of poverty. So that thing you felt could help him has now led to his end. So my point is, ends are always like beginning of new things. However, for sustainability, if you want to think sustainable solutions, it requires deep thought. Do you know that in America, where the presidents will be buried is already marked? The people who will do the jobs, they already know. Do you know people plan for their death? Recently, I just had 2 months ago, I was in Lagos coming back, and they were telling me about this woman who died. She planned for where she was buried. She planned for the number of guests that were going to come. She planned for the food we were going to eat. Nobody, none of our children. That is not a first or second order line of thinking. That is deep.
Planning is really an issue.
Yes. So if you don't plan, your businesses cannot be sustained. So that's why you even see churches. And that's sometimes when I see some pastors, the way they carry maybe their congregation, I like, see, if the people around you are not growing, if they are not even thinking better than you, everything is going to end.
Yeah,
And that's why you see towards the ending, when you don't have that energy, they now find out all of a sudden the youth and the vibe around them is not there. Because all the while, you didn't see the need to grow that. And that's why many people will be so lonely and bored in their old age. Because if you are not using the same transformative approach, somebody who comes across to me should be better than me now. I should be able to share my experience as a guy. You don't need to go through this way. I've gone through that.
Yeah.
These were the lessons I learned. I'm not saying you need to, that's it. So for sustainability, there's a need for us to mentor people and for us to be able to like put certain guidelines. Like I'll say, okay, you know what? Let's grow this line of business and things. A few businesses, they may be able to do it. So and that's why some people tell you that wealth transfer is not necessarily transfer of assets. It's the discipline of the mind.
Yeah, transfer of mindsets.
The discipline of the mind. You need to transfer the discipline. We need to transfer the principles that even made you acquire the wealth. If you don't do that, if you like give them all the assets, they will wreck it. And we've seen that with many families in Nigeria who were wealthy before. And that's why I also believe that the young poor child who is listening, who feels like, oh, I don't have anybody and things like that, you can be the star. You are the one that may just be the one to, raise your family and bring them out of squalor and things like that. So they tell you, yes, tough times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times breed weak men, and weak men create
bad times.
So if we're in bad times, that tells you the kind of men we have.
If you're in a bad time, it means we have weak leaders. Yeah. Thank you so much for that insight. So, because in Nigeria, most people are on survivor mode. And most times the plans that we plan is just for Saturday. But, you have white people who are planning for 3 generations. And I think from what you have said, the best inheritance you can leave for your children or the younger generation is mindsets, principles, work ethics. Because if you give somebody who does not have the right mindset, the right work ethics, you give him so much resources as inheritance, he's going to spend it. And it goes back to the Chinese proverb that the first generation makes the money. The second generation will spend it because they don't have the mindset, they don't have the work ethics, they don't have the principle. And then the third generation will not even see the wealth that you work so hard. So mentorship is really critical. And what leaders should really focus on is not just transferring wealth, but transferring mindset, work ethics, discipline. Wow, thank you so much for your contribution. And I believe that today's conversation is actually going to transform minds. We are very intentional to ensure that people who are watching and who are hearing will get 1 or 2 ideas to make meaningful transformation in their life. So as we have come to a close of this podcast, I have a final question for you. What impact do you want to be remembered for? Kester Aldo, what impact do you want to be remembered for?
Very interesting question. I want to be remembered that anybody who comes across my path, you would not be the same person. Either by my life or what I say to you, or by the things I have done. And in my small corner, I've seen it. So some people tell you, for me, I don't fear death. If given where I've come from, there's a way you live your life, you are just contented. You aspire for more. If there's anything that is driving, why did I come back to Africa? Of course, it's to see. There's a lot of problems to solve. So what I want to be remembered for is any life I came across. By what I said, by what I did, by what I built, or by partnerships or anything, there should be that transformative effect. I don't need scale. I don't need platforms. But when they tell you still waters run deep, just having that intestinal effect. You are not seen. You are not known. But people will tell you, it was this thing this man did that brought me here. That's what I want to be remembered for.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to end with a quote by Mother Teresa. If everyone would sweep their own doorstep, the whole world would be clean. And just for those who are listening and watching, just do your part. If you can just do your part, I'm telling you, Nigeria, Africa will be a better place. So, Kester, I'm so grateful that you made that migration from Europe to to Nigeria, and we're already feeling your impact. I have felt your impact, and people need to also contact you. So, if somebody wants to contact you, how can they contact you?
Yeah. Mostly emails. I respond.
Okay, so maybe can you give your emails, maybe something?
Just kesteraudu@gmail.com. Yes, kesteraudu@gmail.com. I respond. I like to just solve problems. It's not even about a resourcing thing, but just what is it? Because I even believe that in this part of the world, sometimes you don't need to know everything, but just show people you care, show them concern, just hear them, all right, and profile what's within your means and what you cannot. Refer to other people, and I think we can transform our immediate environment. So just kesteraudu@gmail.com. Yes, that's any messaging our.
Kester, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversations. Yeah, wonderful conversation. Thank you everyone for watching. If this has helped you one way or the other, please subscribe and let other people to watch this program. Thank you so much. I'm out.